Okay, we will to update the slide.
Hey, Kim, I'm wondering if we can start interpretation, please.
Yes. And you said you're English to Spanish?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect.
Hey, Kim, I'm wondering if we can start interpretation.
What was that? A double?
That was the live on YouTube, sorry.
I'm like, wait, what
I knew
happened?
exactly what it was. It can really
Okay.
mess with you if you didn't know it started.
Right?
Hi, Kim.
Everyone good? Oh, yes.
It's actually Emilia who should be the interpreter.
English to Spanish, right? Isn't that what I did? Let's see.
And if not, it's okay. We'll move forward just as it is.
Can you confirm, did that work?
Yes, that worked.
Okay, cool.
Thank you. For those of you who are joining us, welcome. We're gonna start in just a moment. And meanwhile, we're gonna toggle between two slides. One slide is asking you to rename yourself, and ILG team is working behind the scene, helping to rename you as well. And the second slide provides instructions to English-Spanish interpretation. Okay, well, it's 5 o'clock. I know some of you are still signing in, so let's go ahead and get a slow start and maybe start with our instructions how to tune into the Spanish interpretation. I'm just going to pass it to Marisela and she will provide those instructions in Spanish.
Hola, muy buenas tardes y bienvenidos a la reunión de chapter de AB 617. Y aquí en la pantalla puede ver cómo si necesita que escuchar esta reunión en español, simplemente va a buscar el logotipo de interpretación o dice, es un icono de un globo. Va a entrar allí y luego va a oprimir el idioma español. Y luego, aparte de eso, va a querer seleccionar el botón que dice Mute Original Audio, que significa silenciar audio original. Y luego así ya le va a dejar escuchar la reunión en español. Y en caso de que se desconecte o no tenga problemas del audio por Zoom, puede llamar al número que está aquí en la pantalla, el 888-240-3210. Y el código de acceso es el 3373-645. y luego aparte el signo de número o tecla, y así puede escuchar aunque sea la reunión por teléfono, y también puede verla a través de la pantalla aquí de Zoom en caso de que tenga problemas del audio. O si no, simplemente nomás déjenos saber que está teniendo problemas y tratamos de resolverlo lo más pronto posible. ¿Alguna pregunta en este momento? Ok, escuchando ninguna pregunta, vamos a proceder. Thank you, Hannah. We've given them this information.
Great, thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Hannah Stelmakovich, and I am part of the facilitation team from the Institute for Local Government. My colleague this evening is Kim Denka, and she is your buddy, your person for any technical difficulties or any questions you may have throughout the meeting. So chat Kim privately, and she will get back to you and try to troubleshoot in real time. As always, the ILG team will be facilitating this conversation. And really our goal is to offer neutral guidance and capture community voices and priorities to ensure that we continue to implement community emission reduction plan, community air monitoring plan, and these meetings are productive, and most of all, we stay on time. And as always, we're here to help with any problems you may have throughout the meeting. Okay, we have a great agenda tonight, and thank you for all of you who participated in the agenda setting calls. We will start with our standing updates. We will hear quick updates about subcommittee air monitoring plan and updates from our local and state partner agencies. And then we will continue with discussing some of the SERP measures. In fact, we have 6 different measures that the Air District will be sharing with you. Some of the program plans are already been submitted. Some of the program plans are in the works, so the wheels are in motion. We're excited to talk about these measures and to hear your feedback about the next steps. And this is really the bulk of our meeting tonight. Let's go over Zoom controls. For those of you who are members of the public and joining us for the very, very first time, those are some of the Zoom controls we use in this meeting. My colleague Kim will do that.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. Just a reminder to stay on mute throughout the duration of the meeting. But if you are planning to speak or if you have a question, you can raise your hand. Zoom was updated recently, so it's either going to be your blue hand or it's under your reactions button now. And if you're participating by phone, you can do *6. You can use the chat box to have any questions or comments, or if you need to reach out to me for help, please just use the @ symbol when you're replying to somebody. And if you're using 2 devices, you can link the 2 accounts by using your participant ID. Just press pound and then type in your ID and it'll connect the 2 devices. And just a reminder that this meeting is being recorded and streamed live on YouTube.
Great, thank you, Kim. As I already mentioned, those meetings are always open to the public, and we are grateful to the public members that participate via YouTube or Facebook or Zoom throughout this meeting. We will have public comment period at the end of the meeting, so stay with us, please. And as always, comments and questions posted on District Facebook or on the YouTube or in the chat will be addressed during that public comment period at the end of the meeting. As a quick reminder to our participants who are eligible to the stipends, you have to be present 75% of the meeting to be eligible for the stipend for this month. And I'm going to turn back to my colleague Kim to make sure everyone in the participant list, we capture everyone and we're not missing any members, especially those who are eligible for the stipends.
Yeah, so we do have a couple of phone numbers that are unlisted. So the last 4 digits, 3450.
Hi, this is Colby Morrow. 3450 is Colby Morrow. Thank you very much.
Colby. And then we've got last 4 digits, 8461. Maybe you can chat us if you get a chance. And then we do have a Valley Can description, but not a name. So we'll keep on reaching out to you throughout the meeting to make sure that you're renamed.
Okay, Thank you so much, Kim. Well, I think it was the fastest housekeeping items ever. I think we officially set the records of 5 minutes. With that, I would like to turn to Ryan for his welcome, and also our Janet Herrera, our community co-host, who will do her welcome as well after Ryan. And also she has a great presentation to share with you all. Ryan?
I'll just keep it brief. Just good to see everybody tonight, and got a good agenda, lots to talk about, exciting progress as we move forward with the individual CERP measures, and just thank everybody for their continued participation. Thanks, and turn it over to Janet.
Thank you, Ryan. So I'm going to be sharing my screen for a short presentation that I'm going to do on the organization that I belong to, which is the Central California Asthma Collaborative. So my name is Janet Herrera, and I am the community health worker for CCAC. And I just want to make sure that everybody can see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen, Janet. And for our Spanish-speaking participants, you should have the paper copy of that.
Yes, the Spanish slides are on here. They're like combined. Can you see this? It's got English and Spanish.
Oh, this is perfect. You rock, Janet. Yes, we can see it well. Maybe zoom in a little bit.
Yeah, Zong did send this to me.
Yeah.
She had mentioned that it would be like they were working on combining like the English and Spanish version PowerPoints that I had provided. So CCAC's mission is to provide education and direct services, build regional capacity, and advocate for sensible policies that improve health and address inequities by reducing environmental impacts and emphasizing the prevention and management of chronic disease. So we see a San Joaquin Valley where the health of every resident is our foremost concern. We envision environment and systems of support for health reflected in the resources, information, and activities and policies in every community. So some of the projects that CCAC is working on currently is the asthma impact model, which is what I focus on. I am the community health worker for that. We've got the Clean Vehicle Empowerment Collaborative, specifically the Electric Vehicle Navigator program, and there's a large team of people who do that in Fresno, but they do serve residents in all throughout the San Joaquin Valley. CCAC is also working on the San Joaquin Valley Air Monitoring Network through the Community Air Grant Program. They're also working on the Children's Health and Air Pollution Study called CHAPS for short, and the Summation Project. Sorry, I'm trying to take both Spanish and English in here.
Actually, I'm gonna pause it for just a second. Maybe it's my bad. When you zoom out, then we can see both sides, all the text.
Yeah, let me.
Maybe try maximizing, press the green, open it to the whole screen.
Good suggestion, Heather. Oh,
Okay.
I think that worked.
Yeah, that worked. Thank you. Okay. So I'm just gonna explain a little bit about some of the programs that we have on this slide. So the CHAPS program, it's a study, the Children's Health and Air Pollution Study. It strives to understand and reduce the risk of air pollution exposure to children's health in the San Joaquin Valley of California. And so this is a project focusing on investigating the air pollution exposure on children in Fresno during critical growth stages. And if anybody wants more information on any of these programs, you can always contact me. I'm going to have my contact information at the end, and I can connect you to the right people. And for the Electric Vehicle Navigator program, it's a program that helps promote and simplify access to the different electric vehicle incentive programs by informing residents of the available electric vehicle incentives that they may be able to qualify for, and to help them through the incentive program application process. Okay. And for the Community Air Grant Program, CCAC and its partners have actually already implemented a community air monitoring network called SJV Air to collect and display real-time PM 2.5 data in disadvantaged communities across the San Joaquin Valley. So the network is focused on communities that are not located near an existing regulatory model and will provide easy access to residents living in these underserved, predominantly rural communities. And by this easy access, we mean a website. There is a website that provides this information. And you can always sign up with your email or your number to receive text message alerts of how to display the real time PM 2.5 data. Also, CCAC and its members are members of the South Fresno, the Shafter, and the Stockton Community Steering Communities. And as the CSC members, CCAC actively participates with local residents, business owners, and agency staff in the development of the local air monitoring and emissions reductions plans. Okay. So the Asthma Impact Model is CCAC's flagship program and addresses our goals as listed below. So we do education at the individual and family level, also public, communities, and institutional level. We provide direct services as in clinical services, air quality and chronic disease behavior change services. And we also do system change and policy development through advocacy. And we increase capacity for CCAC sustainability and regional capacity. Okay, so as I said, asthma impact model is actually like my focus as a community health worker. So it's a multi-component asthma intervention strategy composed of in-home environmental evaluations, health education, case management, testing, and utilization review. So when we're doing all of this education on asthma facts, we're also educating patients on how air pollution can affect their asthma control, which is why just all this environmental work is very important to our organization. We've also formed partnerships with local managed care organizations, agencies, and clinicians. And right now we've formed a partnership with Kern Family Healthcare, who is helping us to start up this program. They're referring patients to our program for the asthma management. And we calculate and report intervention outcomes and costs, determine policy implications, and assess feasibility of scaling and develop specific policy goals for sustainability. Okay. So that was just like a really short presentation into CCAC. As you can see, there are a lot of programs going on, and if anybody wants any more information on any of those programs, please feel free to contact me. This is my contact information, my number, and my email, and hopefully I can get you connected to whoever it is that you need to speak to.
Great. Thank you so much, Janet, for sharing this very interesting and very important work that your organization does, and a lot of different programs. Any quick questions for Janet from our CEC members about any existing programs, anything she presented on? Okay, I see no hands, nothing in the chat. Janet's information is also online as part of this presentation, as part of the PowerPoint, and she's also a committee member. You can reach out anytime. Again, thank you so much for presenting. Let's give Janet a virtual round of applause.
Thank you, Hannah.
Okay, moving on to our standing updates, and let's go ahead and start with John, who will share community air monitoring plan updates with you all.
All right, thank you, Hannah, and good evening, everybody. Good to see you on here. Just a few updates for you on air monitoring since the last meeting. Just a reminder, we're continuing to operate the newest installed air monitoring sites of Bolden Oak Elementary, Sequoia Elementary, and the air monitoring trailer at Shafter Farm Labor Camp. So that work is continuing. We're collecting a lot of data at those sites, and we're looking forward to providing more detailed updates as we get a lot more data across the Shafter area. Data from these sites is available on our website in real time for PM 2.5 and ozone. So you can go on the Shafter air monitoring site and look at all that data on a real-time basis if you want to see that. Did want to follow up on one thing that we brought up at the last meeting. There was a discussion about a high wind event a few months ago on January 27th that impacted the Shafter area as well as other parts of the valley. It was a blowing dust event, and we looked specifically at some of the speciation data. So at the last meeting in March, we talked a bit about the speciation data for PM 2.5 that was measured on that day, and looking closely at it, we saw a large portion of that PM 2.5 was dust from the blowing dust event from the high winds that we saw in the area. there were still some questions about the VOC measurements in the area, if that looked like we had a strange spike in some of the VOC data. So we got the lab results back from that, and that was still a question we needed to follow up on. So looking at the lab data for January 27th, we didn't see any abnormal spikes in VOCs on that day. The VOC levels looked similar to other days around the same time period. So no OEHA thresholds were exceeded for the VOCs on that day on January 27th. It really was just a dust event that impacted PM10 and some of the PM2.5 measured on that day in the Shafter area. So that's a report to follow up on that outstanding question. Just a note here for ongoing ammonia measurements in Shafter, we're continuing that at the Shafter DMV site with the canisters that samples that we're taking over the January and February time period. We again haven't detected any ammonia in the middle of the Shafter community there. The values are still below the detection limit. So we will continue those measurements there, and we will certainly keep you updated if we see any values that are measured and anything of concern. But over the past few months, we haven't seen that. Just a last note here, we are working on summarizing data collected for the fourth quarter of 2020 for Shafter across all of the sites. And so we're working on that report to summarize that about what we've learned in the area. When we have that available, we'll certainly let the steering committee here know that report has been posted for you to take a look at. And that's it for my updates, Hannah. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, John, so much. Any questions, reactions for John? Gustavo, I see your hand up. Good evening.
Hello, good evening. This is Gustavo Aguirre with Central California Environmental Justice Network. One question I did have, and I'm not sure if I missed it, but we had previously talked about setting up a stationary air monitor in the community of La Colonia Mexicana. And I know we had addressed some issues with connectivity and other things, location. But one, I want to know if the Air District has worked with residents in La Colonia Mexicana to make that happen. And then a question on resources for that. Like if the only limitation is connectivity, where in this budget for 617, can we see that there is like some opportunity to make something like that happen, right? Where if the only kind of blockade that is preventing this from happening is connectivity, how can we make that happen within the 617 project? So that's pretty much my question.
All right. Thanks, Gustavo. Yeah, so to answer your question for that area of the Shafter community, we do have a unit set aside for that. So when we purchased equipment for the Shafter Community Air Monitoring Network, we had a piece of equipment set aside for the Mexican colony area. So we have something to use in the area, but the challenge there has been trying to find a secure location to place the equipment. I know there's been some discussion about possibly having it at a resident's home, but that certainly that can cause some challenges with liability and making sure it's in a secure spot. So those are things that we'd have to think about and work through. I think there've been some discussion in past meetings of trying to get some ideas from other community members about where it could be placed in that area. So if you have some direct recommendations on where we could place it in the Mexican colony area, we would love to hear that. We've explored the area trying to find a good spot, and there hasn't been a clear place we could put it that has access to power that is secure, and we can know that it's going to measure measurements in the area. But if you have any thoughts now, that'd be great, or you can get back to us, and we'd love to work with you all in trying to find a good spot for that area.
Yeah, and I think definitely looking forward to working on you and the team with that. But I think one spot that has been recommended over and over again is like a restaurant called La Gardenia, if I'm not mistaken, in the Colonia Mexicana that has access to power, potentially has connectivity as it's a public space. I'm not sure if it's operational, during this public health crisis, which continues to really kind of hit, places like these kind of rural areas very much very hard. So yeah, I would love to, and I'm not sure if Dora Hernandez is on here, who is a community member of La Colonia Mexicana. I recently spoke with her, and I know she's unable to make some of these meetings because of other compromises. But I've spoken with her, and I know she also has recommended that place. So I think the sooner the better. We could like, if we could do it this week, that'd be great. To where we could start having these conversations of where we could put this monitor up. Because there has been a lot of disencouragement from residents, seeing that they've been requesting this kind of standing air monitor and mobile air monitoring for a while, and really has not been delivered. So I really want to extend my help and my support to make this happen as soon as possible.
Yeah, thanks, Gustavo. I know this is the last area of the Shafter network that we're trying to figure out and work on. We've got all the other locations figured out and set up, and this is definitely the last one, and it's an important one. So we certainly want to work with you all to figure out something to get a monitor there long term to get some measurements in the area. And we'll check on that recommendation you had for the restaurant. Something we'd have to think about too is if there are a lot of emissions from cooking and in that area, we would have to be mindful that the measurements we take there with the PM 2.5 unit could pick up measurements from those activities, and it may not be representative of just the normal of what we see in the area without those cooking operations. So we'll have to take a look at that and see if that could be a concern, but we will take a look at that location if we haven't yet, and work with you on figuring out a solution.
Yeah, thank you so much. And then this is also on the air monitoring piece, but I think it's a much larger conversation, and I think it's one that the residents also very much feel kind of exhausted bringing it up, and they ask that I bring this up, and it's been requested by many community members in the past, along with some other steering committee members, on an outline of carbs and the district's budget of how much has been spent on air monitoring equipment, right? And how much of that has been deployed already. And so many of the requests that have been made on kind of some form of transparency on the investment that has gone into Shafter, right? There's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of working pieces of elements that we are very, very well aware of. But I think, just out of mutual respect, and this has been going on for maybe 2 years now, where residents have requested over and over again some form of transparency on just knowing what kind of investments are going into this community, right? They understand the large macro picture of how much money was allotted in the SERP, but they really wanted to see, and I think they deserve to see, we all deserve to see how that has been moving. And I think that will really show the level of importance that we also implied when we did all the endless exercises of showing, what were the priorities for the SERP and the strategies. So I just want to put that out there again. It's tied with the air monitoring, but it's much more larger than that. So if we could have some time either today or sometime very soon to speak on that, I think, or to show some kind of report to the residents, I think that would be great. And that's both for CARB and the Valley Air District.
Thank you guys for these comments and excellent questions. So I see, to kind of summarize what I'm hearing, the Air District is actively exploring Mexican colony locations and open to alternative locations where to place the equipment. And one of those are La Gardenia restaurant for Gustavo. Looks like John is suggesting another location. Is that the location, John, your suggestion in the chat box? There used to be an old water well and tank site at the colony.
Yes, but Dora's well aware of it, so I would imagine she's offered it up if it's viable. So just thought I'd throw it out.
Thank you. Any other locations? You're welcome to use the chat box, or you're welcome to unmute yourself and let the Air District know. I see none. So this Air District will follow up with maybe individuals, Gus, Dora, To get that item moving into your second point, Gustavo, yes, I'm hearing that financial transparency and spending transparency is very important to this committee. Looks like you've been reaching out, and I don't know if Ryan want to chime in on that or not at the moment, but definitely we're hearing you loud and clear, and some type of two-way communication will be happening. Okay, I see no more hands. We're gonna keep moving along. We have more updates, including update on school filtration and school buses, which I think Brian is presenting.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. In terms of updates for school buses and school air filtration, I would say that the school districts are continuing to actively work on both of these issues, particularly with school buses. Richland School District is working closely with PG&E on infrastructure needs. They're working with bus manufacturers to identify what's going to work with their community. They're doing a lot of homework and research to that effect to ensure that the buses that they end up purchasing are really going to work and meet their needs. Each school district has a unique set of needs, and they're trying to make sure that these electric models can work with the needs of their particular school district. We're continuing to talk with Martin from Richland, and I think they're doing a lot of great work to make sure that these buses are appropriate and adequate. And I believe probably at the next meeting, they'll be available to attend and potentially answer questions and provide maybe a little bit more feedback on kind of the direction that they're headed there. In terms of school air filtration, again, there's a lot of kind of moving pieces. I think we touched on this in a previous meeting. The schools certainly are in a unprecedented situation, trying to get kids back in the classroom. There's also a lot of state and federal resources that they're trying to navigate that can provide for increased HVAC units and things like that. So we have the program for school air filtration. That's one of those options, and our school districts are kind of in the process of trying to figure out what's going to work best for them in that regards also. So those are relatively brief updates, but that's kind of where we're at, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Brian. We had one question from Linda in the chat. How many buses are being allocated to Richland?
Right now, Richland has contracts for 4 electric school buses.
And Linda, I see that you have a follow-up question. Good evening.
Hello, thank you, Brian, for your update. I was wondering, we've got 10 that are available through the Air Board, right? So if we've got 4 for Richland, did we say whether other schools outside of the 7 Mile would be able to apply, like Maple or Rio Bravo Greeley?
They would be able to apply, provided that those buses are, obviously working and operating in the radius in the Shafter community.
Okay,
So
thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Brian? If yes, please raise your hand. Anyone on the Spanish-speaking line? And I forgot our Spanish-speaking participants to see if they had any questions for John. Apologies.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Hey, I have a question for Brian. Brian, you talked about filtration for schools.
Yes.
Okay, Brian, you're from a school district or you're from one of the EJ groups?
No, I work for the Air District in our Grants and Incentives Department.
Oh, got it. Understood. Okay, I am from IQ Air. I put my information on the chat box. I'd love to talk to you when you get a chance.
Okay, thank you, and I'll note that information and we'll follow up with you in the next couple of days.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Arela, for chiming in. And I see that you're a member of the public. We're thrilled that you're here, that you're connecting with the district. And I'm kindly and politely asking all members of the public to patiently wait until the end of the meeting so we can talk. We can prioritize our committee members. Anyone on the Spanish line, questions for Brian or for John about air monitoring of schools, filtration and buses?
I have a for the monitor. I wanted to bring a motion in for the next meeting to get a clear budget of how much has been spent on the monitoring, like a clear report. I know it does take some time, but I think it's important for residents to get clear answers, and they've asked multiple times. So I wanted to bring a motion for the Air District and for CARB to give us a clear picture of how much money has been spent on monitoring.
Thank you, Bianca, for that request. And I guess I will pass it to Rand so he can talk about the timeline and what does it take on the Air District side to share that information.
Yeah, thank you both, Gus and Bianca, for bringing that up as a topic for conversation. And we can look to have that put on the next steering committee agenda.
Sounds like we have our agenda item for the next committee. Excellent action item. Okay, I see no more hands for Brian. No one on the Spanish speaking line. Maricela informed me. We're gonna keep moving along. And next we have updates from Department of Pesticide Regulation. Min Pam is on the line.
We have Mrs. Annabelle, and after that we have Mrs. Trujillo.
Hold on, she's actually does have a question.
So Mrs. Felipe is saying, I agree with Mrs. Bianca. I also want to know about the budget. Sigue usted, señora Anabel. Disculpe.
Yo también hago munición junto con Bianca. Aparte, quiero saber si los del distrito de la escuela o los de los autobuses tomaron en cuenta cuántas escuelas hay aquí en Shafter y cuánta distancia hay para ver si hay más escuelas que califiquen para bases eléctricos o solo es para una escuela destinada. Gracias.
Gracias, señora Anabel. So Mrs. Anabel lets us know that she also wants to agree with the motion that Mrs. Bianca just finished making, and that she also states that besides that, we want to know if the representatives from the district or the school took into consideration how many schools there are in the area, and if a certain school was just predetermined to be the one to receive the funding.
Thank you, Annabelle and Felipe. Yes, this will be on the agenda item, budget information. And for the second question, Annabelle, I don't know if Brian can share that information.
Okay, I apologize. Maybe could you repeat the question? I just had to step away for a second.
Yes, not a problem. So Mrs. Annabelle agreed with the motion that Mrs. Bianca made regarding understanding the budget. And she also asked a question asking about the funds, if the school representatives or the school district had taken into consideration how many schools there really are in the area, and if they predetermined or pre-selected a certain school to receive the funding for the buses.
Oh, thank you so much. So when we developed the SERP, we did take into account the schools that were in the Shafter 617 community and what that would look like in terms of participation for school buses and potential school air filtration measures. In terms of selecting anybody for funding, we have to kind of work off of the applications that we receive for the money, and Richland is the school district so far that has submitted applications for those types of projects. And so we've kind of allocated the funding accordingly. I think it was mentioned earlier, there's funding currently for up to 10 school buses with 617 funding. So there is additional, space and potential additional projects that can be done for other school districts that are operating buses in the area. And we'd be happy to provide our assistance and support to anybody that is kind of ready to turn in an application for those types of projects.
Great, thank you, Brian. Looks like you answered Annabelle questions because I see her using the reactions, and Minerva is also using the reactions. I love that, guys. Our meetings are a little bit more exciting with those reactions. Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna move us along. We have a couple more updates from CARB and from DPR and from local agencies. So let's hear from those folks as well about issues that are very important to this committee. Min Pam, I think we are ready for you.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'm Min. You guys have seen me around. Unfortunately, I'm stepping in for Nan today, so I apologize for those of you who came to see him specifically, but you get me. Just giving some general updates for the area. My team specifically has started engaging in the Eastern Coachella Valley AB 617 community, and they have similar kind of interest as this group as well. So I think we're going to kind of use the lessons learned in both of these avenues to kind of address problems going forward. We also had a couple of pilot studies conducted and in the laboratory analytical process right now. We had one that happened in Shafter and one in the Denair region. So thus far we have those two application site studies that are currently being worked on right now. And we're hoping to kind of get some information about that, at least preliminarily, out to the public. And those site studies, we have everything. So we have all the air sampling, weather sampling, and soil sampling. So it's a pretty comprehensive study that we're doing within those regions. In the Shafter region specifically, we're back. We've been back in full force with our AMN site, our Air Monitoring Network site on the school grounds there. We're also looking to introduce potentially 4 additional analytes to fill out our screen a little bit more. And that's in some final testing and validation phases right now. So I can bring that up when we get more information. We're kind of talking internally on whether to use it, potentially pilot in this area or potentially statewide, where we're kind of unsure based on what we're going to do with that. Unfortunately, I don't have any updates on the notification front from the last meeting. I was told that Bianca and Gustavo may have had conversations with our exec team, and if you guys have anything you're willing to add, I'd kind of open the floor to you. But that wraps up our updates from DPR, and I can answer any questions that you guys may have.
Yeah, I do have just a quick update. We had a meeting back in April April the 1st with a couple members from EPA and DPR, Val, and Julie. We had quite a few staff from there in regards to our notification. And at the moment, there's no updates, there's no changes. So whatever is trying to be replicated is really difficult because we're having some difficulties. The Ag Commissioner still wants us to do the door hangers, and residents don't want door hangers. They really want what Val sent out in the letter back in December and nothing less than what it is. So there's no compromise at the moment, and we're just waiting on what the Ag Commissioner does at this moment. I know that DPR does have a scheduled meeting with Glenn and a couple farmers, and is scheduled out to meet with us afterwards. So we're just waiting for his conversation with Glenn, and then we could see where it all goes to.
Thank you, Bianca, for sharing that, and thank you, Min. Any questions for Min from our committee members? Anyone on the Spanish line?
I don't know if Glenn wants to give any report back. the floor's for him if he wants to report back if he met with Val.
Okay, I see no one on the Spanish line. I don't see Glenn unmuting himself. So sounds like, and Bianca, I hear a little bit of frustration in the, oh, Glenn, did you unmute yourself?
Yes.
Hello, good evening.
I don't have any meetings scheduled with any farmers or with DPR, so I don't know what Bianca's referring to. Similar to what she said, I don't have any update. There's no plan to do anything. I think the best option is the statewide notification that the talks are still in play with that.
Thank you, Glenn.
I think there was the money allocated through the AB 617 specifically for notification, and especially how residents really advocated for notification to be played out in the chapter area. So I know that Val wanted to speak with you. I don't know, maybe I spoke really sooner than I should have, but maybe he's gonna do the outreach soon with you.
Okay, well, what I think I'm hearing, there's a little bit of follow-up from the meeting that took place between the committee members, DPRs, and other folks. With that, I don't see any more hands up or any questions for Bianca or for Min, and I don't see no one on the Spanish line. Okay, we will continue to revisit in this topic and continue moving on with the momentum forward. Thank you so much. Next, we have Michael from the City of Shafter.
Thank you, Hannah. I wanted to let the committee members know, and as well as the members of the community know, that since the last steering committee meeting, the cities had a virtual discussion with district staff on March 23rd. Kern COG staff, Kern Council of Government staff was also participated in that discussion to provide details on current and future CMAQ projects that AB 617 might be able to partner on. Current COG staff confirmed that the project opportunities are very limited over the next few years, but we did discuss other project leads and even the possibility of possibly restructuring the funding allocations to put a heavier emphasis on projects in the coming years. For now, the projects we discussed focus on road shoulders, sidewalks, bike lanes, and charging stations at public facilities. But district staff did express some interest in exploring the possibility of investing in the right-of-way acquisition for a roundabout intersection that's being designed by Caltrans at the intersection of Highway 43 and Santa Fe Way. So just that's all I really had to share. But other than the city is ready to take these project discussions further, and we're willing to commit staff and other resources to make these projects a reality. And we'd love to include the County of Kern on such project partnerships. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Any questions for Michael? Anyone on the Spanish line?
Doesn't seem like we have any comments yet.
I do want to acknowledge the comment in the chat from Michelle, if there's a subcommittee that meets to talk about this. And Michelle, to clarify, you're referring to, can you clarify your comment? Just want to make sure we capture it.
Yeah, can you hear me, Hannah?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
I just want to know on the notification system, there seems to be a lot of chat and letters and stuff, but we never talk about those things at this meeting. Who is meeting to talk about all those things? I mean, we are a community meeting, just two of us can't go. I mean, so I didn't know if there was a subcommittee that's going to meet with the these people to talk about this stuff? Or how is that all happening? Because it doesn't seem to happen while we're together here.
Thank you, Michelle. And I don't know if anyone from the Air District or maybe Bianca want to clarify how these processes are happening in between the meeting. To my knowledge, there's no subcommittee.
There's no subcommittee, but I'll leave my information down below. And if you have any questions on the letters that we've sent out from residents and also from EJ advocates, I can more surely send them to you, and all the information that I have.
That would be great. There's a lot of talk about it. And so sometimes I feel like I've missed a meeting when there's just a lot of information out there and a lot of discussion. I want to make sure all of our voices are heard, just not some of us. So I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing something that I should be attending or talking or bringing to the table.
Great, Michelle. And what I think I'm hearing, this committee, these members do appreciate the spirit of collaboration and open communication and staying in the loop of what is happening in between monthly CEC meetings. Gustavo, I see your hand.
Yes, thank you, Gustavo again for CCJN. I just want to do like a clarifying statement. And in full disclosure, outside of AB 617, the city is also doing like the SB 1000 work groups. So there's a lot of folks that cross from the AB 617 into the SB 1000. That's something that I find it very positive. But also there is a committee in Chapter, which is Committee for a Better Chapter, and they have a community garden. And so oftentimes in these community garden meetings, which are part of the Chapter or Committee for a Better Chapter, some of these discussions are, about SB 1000, about pesticides, about just other social and environmental justice issues. So yeah, I will try to do a lot better about when I say we residents. Indicate whether it's the committees, whether it's the SB 1000 work group, whether it's the folks from the community garden, and that way it's a more inclusive process. But thank you for that, Michelle. And the community garden is behind Sequoia Elementary School. If you guys haven't checked that out, please feel free to drive by. There's a little sign, and the Center for Race, Part of the Environment was part of that project. So you guys will see a sign for CBA or CBS, which is Committee for a Better Chapter, and CRPE.
And Gustavo, I don't know if it's beneficial to share that information in the chat box for those of committee members who would like to be involved in other groups. But what I think I'm hearing and would like to emphasize that you're very involved residents and you are in different meetings and different committees and different work surrounding the city of Shafter. And some of the discussions are happening in those groups. And what I think I'm hearing from Michelle, and perhaps many committee members can resonate with that. I'm going to put this back on the committee and say that committee appreciate the open, transparent conversations that are also happening in this space when all the committee members are present. So I'm just going to put it back on you guys. And thank you, Michelle, for bringing this up. Okay, I see no more hands. Gus, thank you for sharing that information in the chat box. We're going to move on to CARB to see if Scott with CARB or anyone else has any other updates for this committee.
Hi, everybody. It's Karen Buckley here at CARB. I'm going to take this one quick for Scott. I just wanted to let everybody know that we have just posted our budget document that talks about our implementation funding. I'm going to put the link in the chat. And we can, of course, discuss it at the next meeting since it's on the agenda for next time. If you guys have questions ahead of time and you want to send them to us ahead and we can get those ready for you, we can do that. However you guys want to handle that. But as soon as I can, I will go ahead and put the link into the chat. And that's the update that I've got today. Thanks, everybody.
Great. Any questions? Thoughts, reactions for Karen? I see none. Anyone on the Spanish line?
None so far.
Great, thank you. Okay, we're doing good on time, and we already got agenda item for the next meeting and a couple more clarifications about the process and what's happening in the meetings, what's happening in between the meetings. Let's keep moving along our agenda because we have a great Air District prepared a great information for you where they talk about incentive measures for passenger vehicles, and there's going to be 3 incentive measures and what program plans have been developed, what program plans are being a proposal right now, a concept, and we would like to hear from this committee your feedback, your thoughts before that program plan is going to be submitted to CARB. And then we're also going to talk about outreach measures, and we're going to take those measures into, we're going to address those measures into 2 buckets. We're going to start with incentive measures for passengers' vehicles, and Brian or someone else will share the update on that.
Okay, well, good evening again, everybody. And Hannah, do I need to share the presentation on my screen, or is somebody going to pull that up logistically? How are we handling that?
You are welcome to share the presentation if you have it handy, and if not, ILG can pull it out from the website and share.
Okay, let me see if I can do this.
Okay, thank you for your patience, everyone.
Okay. Hopefully the presentation's up on the screen now.
And just, Brian, to clarify, maybe with Heather or other Air District folks, our Spanish-speaking participants have a paper version of this presentation, or we're encouraging them to follow it online?
They do have a paper version, and I will drop the link in the chat in case they would like to follow online.
Okay, folks, great, thank you.
Okay. All right, wonderful, thank you. So our goal tonight is to discuss a couple of our light duty vehicle measures that we have within the community emission reduction program. We're going to talk about light duty charging infrastructure, vehicle repairs, and vehicle replacement options. And what I'll do is just kind of go through each one individually, and we can pause after the brief update and have a discussion on those particular measures. So we'll go through a couple slides. We'll take some questions, we'll have a discussion, and then we'll move on to the next measure. Excuse me. So what I wanted to do is start with kind of a brief recap on the AB 617 program plan process. And we have all of these great measures that are approved as part of the SERP. But essentially each one requires us to get CARB approval to implement them. And we have to provide CARB information about how we're going to really kind of come up with all the details about how a program is going to work, from outreach to emission reductions to the support that we have from the community. So it takes some extensive work to put those together. We have created and submitted several program plans to CARB based on the priorities of the community, and these plans also incorporate feedback from the steering committee. We want to hear what you guys think about how these programs can be implemented, and we want to incorporate that in the information that we're providing to CARB. Once these program plans are approved by CARB, we can begin offering those incentive programs in the community, and we can utilize the 617 funds that are associated with the SERP and kind of get out there and start rolling. This is a kind of a list of the status of some of the program plans that we're working on so far. The approved category includes residential and commercial lawn and garden, the low dust nut harvester program, our alternatives to open ag burning program. And we've recently submitted and had discussions with CARB on the electrical vehicle charging measure, the mechanics training measure, heavy duty truck replacement, yard trucks, and the vegetative barriers urban greening project that we know is a priority of the committee. In addition to those, we're also currently working on our vehicle repair measure, which we'll discuss tonight, our vehicle replacement measure, which we'll discuss tonight, the public fleet vehicle replacement program, a car sharing program, We need to submit the bike lanes and road desk projects, and we're about to submit the residential wood burning device replacement measure as well. So that's kind of a quick picture of where we're at, and we're actively working on trying to get as many of these approved quickly as possible. So in terms of diving into the measures for discussion tonight, we'll start with our electric vehicle charging infrastructure measure. Really the goal of this particular measure within the SERP was to provide a combination of level 2 charging, which you see kind of out at shopping centers and community areas, publicly accessible, that can help charge your electric vehicle. Level 3 is more the quick charge type charging that you might see adjacent to highways or freeways that are out there, and a little bit more expensive. We'll get into the details of what these measures, or what these level 2 and level 3 incentive levels will be in just a second. But really the goal of this measure is to provide the charging infrastructure that would be needed to support the deployment of more battery electric and plug-in hybrid vehicles in the Shafter community. That was a high priority. As we were developing the SERP, the community really wanted to see a lot of battery electric and plug-in hybrid vehicles in Shafter, and we need the corresponding infrastructure to support that. So in consultation with the committee as we were developing the SERP, $850,000 in 617 funding was allocated to this measure. We figure that would provide up to about 78 electric vehicle chargers within the Shafter community. And while this particular measure doesn't necessarily achieve emission reductions on its own, this measure certainly supports the deployment of electric vehicles in the community, which achieves emission reductions by not operating a gas-powered vehicle. So electric vehicles are zero emission, and we want to support that activity. So these incentives available for charging infrastructure range from $5,000 up to $25,000 for a level 3 charger. There are 2 options for level 2. If you get a single port, so you just have one connection there, we can provide up to $5,000. If you have 2 connections on a level 2 charger, that's up to $6,000. And if you get a level 3 fast charger, that's up to $25,000, with a minimum of 30% of the cost borne by the participant for a level 3. Depending on the cost of a level 2, this incentive program can pay for the vast majority of those costs. So some of the requirements that we would have in place for this particular program, as with most of our incentive programs, I should take that back, as the vast majority of incentive programs, you have to have approval to move forward with purchases or installations prior to getting your new equipment. So that's the same in this particular measure. An applicant has to apply to the district in order to get approval to move forward and then receive their funding. So they can't have purchased it and installed it already. They have to be a public agency, so city, county, state agency that's operating in the Shafter area. They can be a business, or they can have multi-unit dwellings. So an apartment complex or some other multi-unit housing complex that's operating in Shafter. All of those different entities could apply for funding. The main requirements are that we want this charging to be publicly accessible. So people that are working and living in Shafter can access the chargers to charge their electric vehicles when they need it. It can be a place of employment for workplace charging, or some combination of both. What we see in the program a lot of times is that it might be chargers might be located at a place of employment for the employees that work there, but it's also completely accessible to the public that might need to visit that office and charge, or just need a charger during the course of their day. Needs to be accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week if it's a level 3 charger. And it must be, the property must be owned by the applicant, or the applicant, provides their permission. The applicant receives permission from the property owner to install the EV chargers. And residential properties are not allowed under this program. Again, the goal of this measure is to provide publicly accessible charging infrastructure to anybody that's living or working or commuting in the Shafter area. So in order to participate, somebody would apply. We would have a very simple application process that they would go through. Applications would be accepted on a first come, first served basis until program funds are exhausted, so that we can quickly review and approve applications and get money out into the community. Once the application is reviewed, a voucher is issued to the applicant, basically allowing them to move forward and telling them exactly how much money that they would be eligible for. They then go ahead and do the installation. So they purchase and install the charger. They do any necessary infrastructure work. Basically, they complete the project so that that charger can be utilized. And then they come back to us and submit a claim for payment and say, hey, we did what we were supposed to do. These chargers are up, they're operating, and they're accessible. They turn in their claim for payment packet to us, and then we reimburse the applicant for the cost associated with that project that they were eligible for. So if they installed 2 level 2 chargers and we said we'd give you $12,000 for that, they turn in a claim for payment showing that they had that amount of expenses, and we reimburse them for those costs. In terms of some next steps for this particular measure, CARB's in the process of reviewing our program plan. They provided some feedback to us last week. We need to incorporate that feedback and get another draft to them. And then what we will need to do is, following approval, make sure that the program, that the community knows that the program is available. And this funding is dedicated to the Shafter community. So we'll do a lot of outreach to ensure that people that work and live in the community are fully aware and can participate in the program. And we're certainly there to provide our assistance in any way, shape, or form that we can to help get these chargers deployed into the Shafter area. So that was kind of the few slides that we had on charging infrastructure. I think I'll pause here and we can answer any questions that you might have about that program plan process or about the charging infrastructure measure that we just had a brief overview of.
Great, thank you, Brian. So this is your installation of the electric vehicles charging station measure. This measure does not reduce reduce emission, but really creates infrastructure to switch to the electric cars, so the community can switch to the electric cars since infrastructure is available. Brian, just to clarify, you will be doing outreach once the program plans are approved. Are you inviting questions right now at the moment, or you would like maybe a couple suggestions on outreach, or that should come later?
Yeah, so and one thing I wanted to mention, in previous discussions with the committee, we had received some feedback on, where you might like to see charging infrastructure. We want to take that feedback, and as soon as the program's available, kind of work with that feedback that we'd received and try and implement projects in those areas. We would like to, get any feedback that the committee might have about the measure and how to participate, or additional feedback that you might have about locations or anything along those lines that might be associated with charging infrastructure. We're going to come back to the committee as soon as the program has been approved by CARB and we're ready to launch, and talk about outreach and solicit the committee's help in doing outreach within Shafter. So we'll have some additional time to talk about specific locations down the road as well. But any feedback that you have, questions, comments, suggestions would be certainly appreciated as we look to get this particular measure finalized here, here with CARB shortly.
Great, thank you for clarifying. What questions do you have about this program or additional feedback on potential outreach or how to participate? John, and then Gustavo.
Yeah, have you found that the grant amount is about 70% of the cost, or is that highly variable?
It's highly variable. You know, we haven't seen a lot of level 3s in the past, but it really depends on what the extent of the infrastructure improvements that are necessary to have that that demand on the electrical grid. So depending on, you know, what they need to do in terms of other improvements, that can greatly impact the cost associated with EV charging. For the level 2 chargers, I mean, it can provide a significant portion, if not 100% of the cost that's associated with it. But it really all depends. It all comes down to what electrical infrastructure upgrades are going to be necessary at a site in order to accommodate those chargers. And I think that's going to be the key component as we look to do these installations is, you know, finding sites that are going to be suitable and publicly accessible and in good locations for the community to be able to utilize.
And then one final question: the power cost itself, is that a part of the application on how those are paid, or how's that handled? The energy.
They really vary. Some have subscription programs that you pay to use on a regular basis, or some have you know, time of use, or, you know, other factors where the consumer does pay a cost associated with that. Others are completely open and accessible to the public, and those costs are borne by the, you know, entity that ends up installing the infrastructure. So it really depends on the model and the situation of each individual sort of participant.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Excellent questions. Gustavo.
Yeah, thank you again. Thank you for that, Brian, for that presentation, man. Can we go back to slide 5, please? I just have some questions.
Absolutely. This one, Gustavo, or
back one?
The table?
No, back to number 5. Okay, so the on the funding, so there's $850,000 that is allocated or potentially allocated to for the infrastructure of EV charging stations, right?
Correct. Yeah, $850,000 in the incentive funding for this particular measure.
And that could potentially equal 78 different stations where people could plug in one car to charge, right?
Yeah, and each location might have multiple chargers. So one spot might have 5, another spot might have 10 or something like that. But it would be some combination of locations that equal about 78 different charges.
Okay, cool. Can you go back to thank you. The next slide, number 6, please.
Sure.
And sorry if you can hear my kids in the background.
That's okay.
It's okay. We can hear you well.
Let's see here. Okay, so the difference between level 2 and a level 3 is like a supercharger, right? Like one will charge a vehicle a lot more faster and efficiently than like a lower level. Is that correct?
Yeah, so level 3 is the fastest, and those you might find like a Tesla supercharger or something. They might be able to charge an electric vehicle in 20 to 30 minutes, something along those lines. You know, if you're traveling long distances and you've spent all your energy, you need to recharge it, you want to recharge it quickly, Level 2 is probably the most common that you'll see around different communities where, if you're out driving around town and you're going to shop for an hour or so, you can plug it into a level 2 charger and it'll get you, some level of charging,
Right, okay.
to support those mileage. But it's not as fast as level 3. It might take several hours to fully charge your car. And level 1 would be like charging it into a regular outlet at your house or something where you're going to charge it overnight. It's a longer charge time.
Right on. And then the funding that is allocated to this is for like the initial down payment or the initial cost of the infrastructure, right? That doesn't include like ongoing costs. That's something that, for example, if I theoretically own, a small pizza shop and I want to install like 5 stations, 5 ports, and I benefit from this program, from there on forward, I would be in charge, or the business would be in charge of the ongoing electrical cost?
Yeah, so this is for like the installation and construction of putting these chargers in, offset those costs. Any like ongoing costs, those would be the responsibility of the participant.
Okay, and I'm thinking like there is a measure somewhere on here where we talk about solar panels as a viable option or something that we could explore. And I know, or I guess there's, evidence out there that suggests, applying solar panels to these electric charging infrastructures reduces that long-term cost to the host. Is that something that maybe could be merged, or is that something that you guys even thought about, or the state has thought about, like how to merge this solar panel program that could be both residential and business that could support this infrastructure?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting concept, Gus, for sure. In terms of the solar measure itself, that's, slightly different in that we were, providing money to leverage an existing program that might be out there and operating. So to the extent that there are those programs out there that somebody could take advantage of, I mean,
I see.
I would think it would make sense for somebody who's doing this type to investigate their options and see what's gonna work well for them in terms of those additional costs associated with the solar and potentially any programs associated there. I think those programs were mainly geared towards residential installations versus like commercial installations. But certainly if I was the pizza owner in that scenario, I'd want to investigate any options that might be out there that could help me make that change.
And, sorry, this is Todd from the Air District, and just to add on to that, it's something Brian touched on a little bit earlier, is there are different models for recouping your cost of electricity. If you wanted to offer that electricity for free to your customers, if you're a business and wants to install chargers, that's certainly up to you. Although there are models that do, charge a nominal fee for, it's $1 or a couple dollars an hour to charge to help you recoup your costs. So that's certainly an option as the installer of this equipment. If that's something you're interested in doing, that's certainly an option as well.
Interesting. That's good to hear. And last question, can we go to the next slide? And I promise it'll be short.
Guys, we have 2 more hands and plus Spanish line and 2 more programs, but let's be brief with that.
Yeah, as far as the like requirements, I think you had mentioned like apartment complexes. Those could be one that could, like, folks that could benefit from this.
Yes, absolutely. We would encourage them to participate. It helps their residents be able to make that transition to cleaner vehicles. So absolutely.
Right on. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Excellent questions. And I think it's very exciting to see your SERP concept, your CERT measure, very high level overview to really learning about all these different details and how we're going to implement this detail program and how many charging infrastructure. So all excellent question, Gustavo. Linda and then Annabelle.
I actually put my comment in the chat. I just wanted to say good point, Gus, on that, because we would like to see more infrastructure at businesses. But with that, would they be a bit available to get the solar? I thought there was a measure SD.1. I'm sorry, I can't look at it right now, but I had actually a phone call from a business that was trying to apply for that, and they said that they could not. I don't know who to reach out to on the air board to help them with that, but they were trying to get solar for their business. And I really feel like this is an important thing that Gus is bringing up. If people are going to input these charging stations, we really need to offer the businesses solar. Thank you.
Great suggestion, Linda. And I don't know if Brian, if you're the one who can get back on the
So yes,
solar information. Mhm.
absolutely. Let me touch base with Linda. Linda, I'll send you an email tomorrow. I think I have your contact info. We'll get connected and find more out about that situation. I do believe though that the measure in the SERP was for residential, but maybe there's some areas we can point them to in terms of where to go for getting solar for their businesses.
Excellent suggestions.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Linda. This is the purpose of this committee, to hear from you for some creative solutions that really benefit the community. Annabelle, I see your hand up.
Sí, yo tengo una pregunta. Con respecto a la ampliación que se va a hacer aquí en Shafte, la nueva planeación que están haciendo en la ciudad, se habló de parkings para carros y algo así, de buscar espacios para facilitar el parquearse a los semáis también. Mi pregunta es, ¿no sería conveniente, ya que va a haber un estacionamiento especial para carros, que la ciudad pudiera complementar también, ingresar también en poner cargadores ahí? Pienso que si es un trabajo complementario, que pudiera la ciudad también contribuir en eso, o pienso que mientras los carros quedan parqueados en la estación que van a poner, que se va específicamente nada más para parquear carros, que la ciudad pusiera cargadores también, porque si la mayoría, que es el futuro, ¿verdad? Puede que tengamos todos carros eléctricos, pienso que 10 o 15 o 20 o no va a ser suficiente en el futuro. Y si esta planeación de la nueva planeación de la ciudad va a ser de aquí a 10 años, sí me gustaría si nos pudieran informar si se pudiera que complementaran también cargadores en esos parkings. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, señora Anabel. Miss Annabelle lets us know, yes, I have a question in respect to the expansion that will take place here in the city of Shafter. I know that we have spoken about parking for vehicles and facilitating parking for semis also. Wouldn't it be convenient if you are supporting a parking area, also complementing the work with the contribution of a charging station? If the majority who are our future, perhaps all of us in the future may be using electric vehicles, and the current planning is something that will affect throughout the next 30 years, wouldn't it be great if we could also contemplate having charging stations at the parking area?
Cool. Yeah, thank you, Annabelle. I think that's a great suggestion. And I think anytime somebody's doing improvements, a new parking lot, a new shopping center, or anything along those lines, they should definitely take that opportunity to think about the infrastructure needs and the opportunities that presents to, provide this type of charging infrastructure to their, whether it's residents or customers or citizens or anything along those lines, at the time when they're building those types of projects, for sure.
Excellent suggestions, excellent questions. I'm going to circle back to our Spanish conference line to see if there's any questions for Brian, and we're going to keep moving along. We have a couple more programs we would like you to learn about and hear your feedback and questions.
Were there any questions on the Spanish line?
We're waiting, Brian.
Okay, sorry.
Give me 1 sec. It's okay.
Looks like none so far.
Okay, great. So just to kind of summarize, these plans are still in the development. The plans are not finalized. So this committee will have opportunity to revisit the implementation phase of these programs once CARB finalizes the plans and the program will be ready to go. Right, Brian?
That's correct.
Okay, what's next?
Okay, so the next measure that we're going to talk about is our tune-in, tune-out program. And the concept of this program is to reduce emissions from high-emitting vehicles that may be in need of emissions-related repairs. Those can be very costly. We want to have a program that can provide some incentive dollars to offset the cost of those very expensive repairs. And this measure would provide $400,000 in funding, which would repair up to about 500 vehicles in the Shafter community and reduce approximately 4.6 tons of NOx emissions from those vehicles. The way this program would work is that vouchers are issued to eligible participants. And those vouchers are worth up to $850 worth of emissions-related repairs at participating STAR certified smog shops. Any costs over $850 or repairs that are not related to emissions are paid by the participant. But this measure really can provide and pay up to that $850, which covers a very substantial amount of repairs to impacted vehicles. Since the last time that we've talked about this program, which was probably at least a year ago, but we've added the Shafter Transmission and Smog Shop recently as one of our participating smog shops. So I wanted to note that. I know we received some feedback in the past. They're STAR certified and operating there in Shafter, and we're very happy and excited to have them participate as part of this program. So in terms of some of the requirements for participation, again, this is aimed at repairing cars that fail emissions tests. And so part of the process is the vehicle would be tested, complete a smog test at the participating smog shop, and the vehicles that fail that emissions test can participate and receive repair funding. There are things like functional failures associated with a smog test. It might be a loose gas cap or the vehicle's been tampered with in some way. Those would not be eligible for the program. We want to focus our efforts on fixing those cars that are having problems with their emissions related systems. Participants must have owned and operated the vehicles for at least 6 months. So these are vehicles that people are using, and they provide DMV registration as part of like the application process or some other identifying way that shows that they're the owner of the car. In order to participate in terms of the 617 related dollars that we have, it would be targeted for residents within the Shafter 617 community, including that 7-mile radius, of course. So they must be a resident within this area for the $617, and they can't have participated within the last year. But typically we find that these repairs are sufficient to keep people from needing them again in a short amount of time. So the way that we've traditionally operated this program prior to COVID was having these events within communities where people could show up and bring their vehicle to a specific location. It might be a fairgrounds or a school or something along those lines. And we would do an emissions test at those events. And the vehicles that fail their emissions tests would be sent to participating smog shops and get their repairs completed and tests and things like that. At the smog shops, they do diagnostics to figure out what's going on with the vehicles and then complete the repairs. And ultimately, before the vehicle leaves the smog shop, they've completed a smog test to ensure that the vehicle has passed for smog and that the emission reductions are achieved. Since COVID over the last year, we've had to stop having large events like that, and we've kind of come up with a model that still works for people to be able to participate and take advantage of funding that's available. And we've allowed people to directly contact our program partner, Valley Clean Air now, who's on this meeting as well. They do an excellent job in implementing this program. So people can call to participate, they can go online and put their contact info, but ultimately they get directed and make an appointment with a participating smog shop that they choose that works for their location. And we do all the same activities. They do a smog test, diagnostic, and get the vehicle repairs completed. So what we need to do with this particular measure before we can start implementing in Shafter and using $617 is finalize and submit the program plan that we talked about. This should be completed by the end of April, and we'll submit it to CARB for their review and approval. We'll present to our governing board and get their approval to launch and implement the program. We'll continue our partnership with Valley Clean Air now. And then once we've completed those steps, we'll launch this measure and this program with the dedicated 617 funding in Shafter. We'll come back to the community steering committee to talk about outreach and ensure that the community residents are fully aware and able to participate. And we'll discuss kind of next steps for program implementation. And maybe at that time, with the way things are going in the state, we're able to schedule an event or look at those types of activities for implementing the program. So we'll keep our fingers crossed there. But that's kind of a recap and an overview of where we are with the repair program. And I'll take a minute and pause here, and we can answer any questions that you might have about this particular measure.
Thank you, Brian. Let's maybe start with our Spanish-speaking participants on the line to see if there's any questions for Brian, any additional suggestions, thoughts about this program. The program, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, the Air District is still developing the program plan that's going to go to your board and then to CARB.
So the program plan will go straight to CARB. Once it's approved and we need our board's approval to implement the project or to enter into a contract with our program partner, we'll take that back to the board probably later this summer by the time that CARB approves the program plan for their final sort of blessing, and then we can launch the program from there.
Thanks for clarifying. Questions, thoughts, reactions for Brian? Anyone on the Spanish line?
It does not sound like we have any.
Not hearing any.
Okay. Annabelle, you have your hand up.
No sé si sea tiempo de preguntar, pero sí me gustaría saber de qué año, si ya lo tienen, son aptos para calificar. ¿De qué año del auto?
Mrs. Annabelle asks, I don't know if this is the right space to ask, but I do want to know what year the vehicle has to be, if you already have those details.
Great question, Annabelle, and I failed to mention, but any model year vehicle can participate in the repair program. We find that most vehicles that participate are, maybe 2008 or so and newer, or an older, excuse me, because those are more likely to fail a smog test along the way, but any model year can participate.
Any other questions for Brian? Thoughts, reactions? Okay, I see no hands up. I think it's safe to say if we can move to the next program. There's going to be one more, folks.
Okay, all right. And I know it's 6:30, so we'll try and go through this, but I'm really excited about this measure, and I think there'll be some good discussion and feedback. And so I'll go through the slides, and then we can talk about it. But the next measure is our passenger vehicle replacement program, replacing them with battery electric or plug-in hybrid models. And this This was clearly a high priority of the committee during the development of the SERP. $6 million was allocated to this particular measure with the goal of replacing up to about 300 vehicles. I think the SERP noted that'd be about $20,000 per vehicle. The way the measure was written, it would be using existing board-approved criteria with enhanced incentive amounts for Shafter community residents for new vehicles. This would build on our highly successful existing program that we have for replacing vehicles, again, in partnership with Valley Cleaner Now. Throughout the Valley, we've replaced about 3,400 vehicles to date using our existing program with cleaner plug-in, hybrid, battery electric, and hybrid technologies. We'd achieve about 3 tons of NOx and 0.08 tons of PM from this particular measure. So taking our existing program and really building off it and offering some higher incentives for Shafter residents. So in terms of implementing this particular program, we would want to limit it to 1 replacement option per household. The old vehicle requirements, currently we're replacing 1999 and older vehicles that have an emissions failure. These vehicles are very old. They're very high polluting. If we can get them off the road, we can achieve significant emission reductions. The other thing to note about this model year requirement, it seems, I would imagine we'll get some questions about that. Currently, in our existing program, we see a lot more demand for the program than we have available funds. So there's a lot more people wanting to participate than we're able to really accommodate right now. And so it kind of indicates that there are a lot of people that have older vehicles. And so we've established that 1999 model year criteria as a mechanism to really focus our efforts on replacing the oldest, dirtiest vehicles out there. And we've been very successful in achieving that through our existing program. Additional requirements for participation, they'd obviously have to be a resident of the 617 Shafter community that has a current driver's license. They would need to meet income criteria, which we'll talk about in just a minute. Owned the vehicle for at least 6 months. We don't want somebody just going to their scrapyard or a neighbor and buying an old vehicle that they think they can just turn in and get a bunch of money to replace it. They need to be able to show that the vehicle's been in use over 2 years in combination with that ownership requirement. And they've also got to be able to secure finances to pay for the costs that exceed the incentives that are available. And they need to agree to own the vehicle for a minimum of 30 months from the date of purchase. And those are standard requirements for our program. In order to participate, our existing program has these income levels, and the incentives are tiered based on where you fall in these income charts. The lower income participants receive higher incentives to participate. So for a family of 4, to be under the lowest level, you would be under about $60,000 in order to participate at the highest incentive levels. The 400% is the highest level that you could have, but again, the incentives are lower as you go higher on the scale. These are our proposed incentive levels for Shafter community residents. This 225 and 300 and 400 again is related to the income tiers that we have. And these incentives up to $20,000 would be specific for the purchase of new electric vehicles or plug-in hybrids for Shafter residents. And I don't think there's a program around that provides up to that amount for new vehicle purchases. And I think this is a great option for residents in Shafter who may want to participate. However, beyond that, some residents may be more comfortable purchasing a used vehicle, and we would still offer our existing program levels for used vehicles, which would be up to $9,500 for electric vehicles or for plug-in hybrids. Again, a vehicle must be, in order to participate in this option for Shafter residents, has to be a plug-in hybrid or battery electric. For the higher incentives, it has to be a brand new vehicle, not a used one, but we can offer lower incentives for used vehicles. And the participant must purchase the new vehicle and register it under its name, insure it as required, those sorts of things that you would normally do with a new vehicle. In terms of applying for the program, we have an online application, we have paper applications that we can provide. Our district staff is available for assistance in completing applications. Our program partners, Valley Can help complete applications. Wherever people need it, we'll be there to help. One of the things that we're talking about and would like to get some feedback from the community, because I do think that this is going to be a very popular program for Shafter residents, is how do we want to select projects associated with this measure? Do we want to have some sort of application period and projects are selected by some criteria that we all agree upon, or do we want to have a first come first serve process? I think there are some good things to discuss in terms of how are we going to select these projects. And then once approved, somebody will get a letter to say, hey, you're approved for this amount and here are the next steps in participating. So we'll be communicating with applicants and providing our assistance in that respect. Participants are going to work with dealerships to select the type of a vehicle that's going to work well for them. And the district provides the incentive for the purchase at the time of the vehicle purchase. So somebody doesn't have to finance that amount and then wait for reimbursement from the district and then get paid for later. Let's say the vehicle costs $30,000. It's a brand new vehicle and we can provide up to $20,000. That $20,000 comes right off the top of the purchase. So the applicant or the participant is left with $10,000 that they would need to pay for. And then the old vehicle needs to get turned in so that we crush that old vehicle and make sure it doesn't operate anymore and continue to pollute. In terms of next steps, for this particular measure, we've developed some initial concepts for the program and we're having this discussion with the steering committee. We can have ongoing discussions about this particular measure as much as needed and kind of refine the concepts for program implementation. Once we have agreement on sort of what the final program is going to look like, we're going to submit that program plan to CARB again for their review and approval. Once we have CARB's approval, we'll take that back to our governing board for their review and approval, and then we can launch the program in the community, including continuing to work with the steering committee and any other partners for program participation so that we can get this program out to the community and get people participating. So that completes this portion of the discussion, and certainly happy to hear feedback, answer any questions, get your thoughts on what you'd like to see or what you think about this particular measure.
Thank you. It's definitely a lot of details, very detailed, a lot of numbers. And what I'm hearing from you, Brian, this is a concept of the program. District is still fine-tuning it before submitting. So your thoughts, your reactions, your suggestions are very, very welcome. Kevin, I see your hand. Good evening.
Hi, good evening. Thank you. And thanks, Brian. So a couple of questions. The first one, I have two. One is, as of Monday or Tuesday, the state just disqualified a whole group of plug-in hybrid vehicles because their batteries didn't meet the new 35-mile range standard. So are those in the new vehicle category? So are those vehicles also disqualified from participating in the Air District's new vehicle replacement program?
Thanks, Kevin. And I'm not familiar with the details of what the state might have recently did. Were those plug-in hybrid vehicles?
Yes, so a year ago, many of us, including CCAC, advocated for a rule change that would disqualify vehicles that did not have at least a 35-mile range with their electric battery. That rule was passed at that time, and the reg was set to, it was created, and the date for the expiration of those vehicles' eligibility was this last Monday. And so that dropped the number of plug-in hybrids available for new vehicle choices to about, I want to say 6 or 7, down from, I mean, a ridiculously crazy number. Now, I will say, talking to the OEMs, the original equipment manufacturers, the Ford and Chevy and Toyota, all their 2022 models that they're holding on to, the plug-in hybrids, will have a battery, most of them capable of going 180 miles or more in their plug-in hybrids. So I'm excited about that, but it does create a gap between now and what, August, September, when the new vehicles come out, somewhere around there, where, you know, there's a whole group, especially for people with families, because a number of those were larger vehicles, vans and such, larger SUVs. So it does create a bit of a problem. And I just wondered whether that was a blanket across all of these programs, as far as I know, and I just wondered if it affected yours as well. The second question is, I mean, this is essentially on the new vehicle side. This is, you're talking about Rebate Now, which launched on Monday, right? Where all the incentives are now stacked and slapped on the hood at the point of sale. That should be a pretty easy yes or no question. Is that correct?
So to answer your first question first, my understanding on our existing replacement program, and we'll need to do some investigation, but there is not a model, or there's not a mileage requirement on our existing program for plug-in hybrid vehicles. So I believe that our current program will not be impacted by kind of what you've outlined there.
But your new vehicle money is CARB's money that they give to you to operate the program.
So in terms of implementing this particular measure in Shafter, this is the Shafter program, and we can, you know, as we draft the program plan, incorporate feedback from the committee. If aligning with that state standard is something that the committee wants to do, I'm sure we can write the program plan in such a way. If having more flexibility and going with the concept that a plug-in hybrid, regardless of its range, because, you know, a minivan might not get the same range as a passenger car. But if we have the concept that that's still a valuable purchase, which I think it is, then we can write the program plan to say that any plug-in hybrid vehicle would be eligible for this particular funding. This is 617 dedicated funding, not state CVRP Rebate Now or anything along those lines.
That'd be great. That'd be great if you can do that. That would be wonderful.
And to clarify, Kevin, to do which part?
To be able to continue to fill that gap on the new plug-in hybrids in the meantime, while until the new models come out. I mean, the new model idea is that 25 miles on an electric battery is really not adequate to show somebody, you know, why you would want to get a fully electric vehicle. So the idea of the plug-in hybrids was always to be a bridge to people thinking, oh, when I drive it on the electric battery side, it drives so easily, it's really cool. So I want one that's just electric. But now, you know, with a battery that's going to go 180, like the Chrysler Pacifica is one of the ones that qualifies. And interestingly enough, just as an example, and their battery goes about 170 miles. So talk about saving money. Your gas mileage suddenly shoots up to, you know, 70 miles to the gallon because you're mostly on the battery the whole time you're driving around, which is pretty cool. But yeah, if you've got a bridge program for that, I think that's great. Thank you.
I see Karen's hand up to see if perhaps she wants to clarify something in regards to your comment, which is excellent. Excellent suggestion, Kevin.
I just want Kevin, I just want to note, so you just want this option to be available until the other models are ready to go, correct?
I didn't say what I wanted. I just said it would be cool if you guys could bridge that time period. That is going to make it, of course, it would only be for Shafter, and there's a whole valley full of people that this affects in all the program. But I'm you know, I think a lot of us were caught off guard, even though that we advocated for this change, and I think it's a good change. It would have been better if CARB had aligned it with the new dealer offerings in the fall, rather than in this, pull the trigger on it then instead of now.
So we're talking about, we're just talking about a few month period that this could occur.
That's what I'm thinking, so that it doesn't encumber the 617 funds too heavily, right?
Right.
If in September, because the new models qualify, you no longer have to spend 617 funds, to bridge that gap, then you want to be as careful with the money as possible, because there's just a finite amount of it, right, Karen?
Yeah, and I think we should provide ourselves the flexibility in implementing this measure to not be tied to state mandates and things along those lines. We have no idea what the cost of those types of vehicles, Kevin, that you just mentioned might be, given the increase in range, what that's going to do. And I think if the goal is to deploy electric vehicles within Shafter, we may want to think about how do we promote that outside of what state mandates might be out there for CVRP or something along those lines.
Sure.
And if
it's not just CVRP, it's CVA has the same requirement. Clean cars for all. Anyway, I agree, and in fact, it would be great if you could add this same incentive for used EVs, because one of the big gaps in all the programs is there's used electric vehicles coming into the market right and left now, right? But the incentives don't cover them. So unless you replace, like your program, I think that's the only one that even comes close. If it does, and I don't know enough about it to say one way or another, but if you could leverage this incentive to cover like a 2018 or 2019 electric vehicle that's only got 20 or 30,000 miles on the battery, I mean, that's practically new for an EV. It'd be great if you could bring those in for that same amount of money. That would be transformational.
Those are all excellent suggestions. I want to be mindful of the time. It's 6:48 and looks like Brian took it all in. I would love to hear a couple more comments from other committee members. Thank you for that contribution, Kevin. Excellent points. You're on top of all the regulations, anyone else, anyone on the Spanish line in the main channel, any other thoughts, reactions to this program, to everything that Brian talked about? Any thoughts on the application process? Should have been first come, first serve, or should have been extended application period, and there's district have some selection criteria how to choose recipients of this money? As Brian mentioned, this program is going to be popular, and they expect a lot of applications from the residents. Annabelle.
A mí me gustaría que fuera un prolongado, o sea, que no los que llegan primero sean los que se llevan las cosas, que se llevan la mayor parte. Pienso que me gustaría que fuera algo más neutral, porque no cualquiera puede tan rápido así aplicar, o que se le haga dificultoso y todo. Hay personas que lo hacen más rápido, pero también hay que pensar en las gentes que más lo necesitan. Eso de las pocas millas se me hace también una cosa muy fantástica, porque creo que abarcaríamos un poco más, con más personas. Ese es mi modo de pensar.
Mrs. Annabelle lets us know that I'd like this program to be more prolonged, perhaps make it more neutral so that those who may be having a harder time filling out paperwork or just preparing to participate in the program can also have an opportunity. And la segunda parte de su comentario, señora Annabelle.
Sí, estaban hablando sobre los carros que tienen unas pocas de millas, que no son 0 millas. Si podrían traer un poco más de cantidad por ese mismo dinero que está ahí, sería fantástico.
Perfect. So I wanted some clarification on the second part of her question, but she says bringing in more vehicles that are newer vehicles or 0 miles would be fantastic for the program.
Okay, I definitely appreciate that feedback.
Great, thank you, Annabelle. And I saw Minerva applauding when you were making your comments, showing her agreement with your comment. Another suggestion from Kevin, Brian, for you in the chat box. As far as first come, first serve, I think the district should sort those who qualify for the existing rebates and make sure those who are maximized before, and making sure those are maximized before spending AB 617 incentive funding. Thank you, Kevin, it's noted. Quick question from Angie. Would the incentive interfere with people trying to cash in on federal tax credits on tax returns? I don't know if you know that information, Brian. And and in the interest of time, I would ask you, Brian, to drop that answer in the chat box. And John, agree with Kevin. What if we should increase the amounts for late model, low mileage used cars? Okay, those are all excellent suggestions, questions. Angie, Brian will get to your question in the chat box. I would like to, I know we would love to spend a little bit more time on this program, but I would like Heather to have a chance to talk about some outreach efforts that are happening right now and pick your brain a little bit more. What are some new potential for outreach? What else can be done? Because we're getting closer to 7 p.m. and I will keep us moving.
Thank you, Hannah. Hello, everyone. Heather Heinz. I'm a program manager with the Valley Air District. Very nice to see you this evening. In the spirit of time, I know it is short. So I do want to tell you the conversation about outreach is ongoing. And we're just going to tip the iceberg tonight because I'm going to defer the collective part of the brain picking until next time so that we aren't rushed. But what I do want to tell you is about a sort of a test event that we're planning at the end of this month to sort of kick off that conversation about air quality, all of the funds that we've talked about here today, all of the programs that are up and running and moving, air quality education, all of that. But mostly trying to catch the public's attention with the opportunity to get involved in funding and cleaning the air for their family. So we picked a date, lots of dates in the future. There will be potential to continue trying this event, but our test date that we picked is April 30th, a couple weeks away, or 3 weeks away roughly, a Friday night. Early evening. We're trying to capitalize on time frame with which we could get in front of both business and maybe residents and just get the conversation started. And I am going to share my screen. Speaking of the conversation, need your feedback. What do you think of this? We'd like to see maybe this kind of messaging. Can you see that sample?
Yes.
So on the screen is a sample potential post, like a social media post. We coined the test event Friday Night Live, and it's our chance to get in front of the community. Obviously, COVID has changed things, and we haven't been able to do what we intended and had that great conversation about a year ago in January. We sat down and talked with you about outreach, and we're kicking it up into high gear, and this will be our first event. And it's just virtual. It's a virtual chance for anybody and everybody to jump online, learn, win prizes, just a positive interaction with the community, chance to get to know time and people and see what habits are and what interests people and kind of go from there. We got a recommendation that because of the date, that maybe we do our promotion the Spanish ads in line with Kids Day, which is that same day. So you'll see that wording, the sample wording on the screen sort of ties that in. But just want to get your thoughts, get you to share it. I'll provide all of the things you'll need to share it, link, Zoom information, all of that, so that you can send it to anyone and everyone anywhere in the Valley. Truly, the information is applicable to anyone that lives in the Valley, but we will definitely have specific information available for the AB 617 benefits. And I cannot see hands. Do we have any questions or comments?
And Heather, to clarify, you will follow up with this information via email.
Yes, yes. Assuming that we have no major objections, everybody's okay with a sort of a pilot event to a virtual, if you will, virtual town hall event to get in front of the community, and I'll provide all the things necessary so that you can share it, and hope that you would share it and follow our page and just continue actually those conversations that you're already having, and we appreciate them very much. And then we can continue our outreach conversation, given it's 6:56 at the next meeting.
One or two quick thoughts on this event? And if not, drop it in the chat box. Okay, I just want to circle back to Brian to help me to close up this agenda item. It feels like we could talk more about each and single of this program in more details. There are a lot of programs in SERP, and there's just simply not enough time. But in the spirit of giving you space to share your comments and share your feedback, Brian, what would be the best way for the committee members to follow up on what you've shared today?
Yeah, great thought, Hannah. And I was just about to send out a chat, but why don't we do this? Why don't we send out the presentation? It's linked on our website. Why don't we have that presentation link emailed out to everybody, and any feedback can be sent to the AB 617 email address that we can use, and we'd be happy to hear any feedback you have. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to talk about it. But I'll have Heather's group follow up with an email with that information.
Great. Stay tuned for two types of communication from the Air District: a request and ask to promote the event, April 30th event, and additional ask to share your thoughts and questions about the programs, especially the third program that Brian talked to us today. Okay, we're at 6:58. Thank you so much for your participation, committee members. Let's go to the members of the public and see if we have any questions on Zoom, or if there's any questions in our YouTube feed or Facebook. Anyone who is on Zoom, members of the public, please raise your hand if you have a question, a comment, a thought. I see none. Heather, anyone on our social media platforms?
No, we are good. Thank you.
Great. And thank you to Iril Perez for earlier comment and connecting with the Air District. Okay, we're at 6:59. First of all, I would like to thank our community co-host, Janet Herrera, who did a tremendous job putting this presentation together and sharing with you all what her organization does and how her work, some of the organization's work, complement AB 617 efforts in the region. I would like to ask you kindly, you committee members who would like to be a May co-host volunteer, and you do not have to have a presentation, but we would love if one of you can volunteer. Please raise your hand or drop your name in the chat, and Kim, help me to monitor if we have volunteers for May. Farewell. Anyone would like to volunteer? It's fun. Janet, John, tell folks it's fun.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
May co-host, May community co-host, who would like to have a little bit more space in this committee meeting and be a little bit more visible. Community co-host for May. Okay, well, think about it. Drop your name in the chat box or follow up with the district later. We are looking for the May co-host. With that, it's 7 o'clock. Thank you all for participating. It was great, productive meeting, great discussions, some action items, agenda items for the next meeting. And we look forward to seeing you all next time on May 10th. Good night, everyone.
So nice to see all of you.
Thanks, Jose.
Muy buenas noches. Muy buenas.